Okay, so welcome today. My name is Rachel Pellison. For those who don't know, I am a registered dietitian, nutritionist, an intuitive healer, and an herbalist. And I am here with my very, very dear friend who we've never met in person, but we've been friends for a long time. And every time we talk, it feels like we haven't missed a beat. So this is Alex Dragney, and she is a writer. She's an energy healer. She works with emotion code. I have to check all my notes here. A family constellations, ancestral healing, and is also a human design and gene keys. I'm just going to go ahead. You said enthusiast, but I'm just going to go ahead and call you a healer because you are, while there's always more to learn in those systems, I think you are vastly knowledgeable. So, welcome, Alex. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I know. So, I had asked Alex to tell her story probably like 3 years ago, and she was like, "I'm not ready yet." And then recently had some really amazing, uh, testing results that came back, and I asked again, "Can we share your story?" And she was finally like, "Yes." So I'm super excited. So Alex is gonna kinda walk us through how she started with medical medium and where she is now, and all the little bumps and hurdles and quiet miracles that came along with that journey. So I guess I'll just start by saying, I think Alex and I met because I was in probably 2018 running some like courses on healing with medical medium information, and Alex joined. And then we just, I think, probably joined some more programs. And then we just like hit it off and became friends and peers, really, no longer. And we both get healing from each other at different times. And Alex is one of the very few people that I really will trust with my own healing, with my own energy work. I don't find a lot of people like it works for me anymore. I used to have lots of healers. Now, like it's very, very limited to like maybe two. So Alex makes that list. So Alex, tell us like how you got started with medical medium and what your sort of health space has been.
Yeah, so I think really my story starts 2015, so 9 years ago that I started having symptoms. And I spent the next 3 years just going to the doctor because that's what you do at first, just kept going back. They couldn't find anything. And I kept getting worse. And my main symptom was dizziness. And it wasn't vertigo because that one they would find it much quicker, like what's going on. It was just this like lightheadedness, dizziness, and it started affecting my quality of life. So that's why I kept going back to the doctor and I kept getting more depressed, more despondent because they couldn't figure out what it was. And it wasn't a symptom that is easily visible from the outside. So I started really not trusting my body anymore, just feeling miserable. And finally, a doctor sent me to a neurologist. And I was very atypical of any sort of neurological disorders or issues. He was not finding anything that could potentially be wrong, but he did send me for an MRI. And the MRI came back in the end of 2018. And I had too many lesions than white matter lesions than was normal for my age. And that's when I was told that I was suspected for MS. And it was, um, I do want to point this out because I think it'll be really important for our story later on. My first thought was, how am I going to tell my family? Like that was my first thought. It wasn't, wow, I might have this lifelong chronic disease. There's no cure for it because I knew about MS. And so that was my first thought. The second one was relief
Mm,
because I'd been so in such a bad place for 3 years. I was like, "Okay, I can get down to work." So that's when I found medical medium. Actually, a really good friend kept bugging me about celery juice. So I was like, "Fine." I guess I'm getting all these signs. So I did get the book, and it was life-changing because I was in a space where I wasn't trusting my body anymore. And I'm even just getting emotional remembering that time because it was like, yeah, it was a really dark place. And um there was this man saying that your body's not betraying you. There are actually other issues at hand. So I don't recommend this, and I don't think you do either. I went cold turkey overnight.
I did the same thing. And I did not sleep a wink that night. The first night I cut out all the no foods, I was up the entire night. And I had a 1-year-old and she was finally
Oh my
sleeping. She was
God.
really a little sleeper. And I was like, what the hell? Like I was like getting up and wandering around because like I can't sleep at all. And I was like
Oh,
going through the detox immediately. So yeah,
yeah.
sometimes baby steps are better.
Yeah. Yeah. I just did the raw cleanse, took out all the no foods.
Oh, you went harder than me even.
It was intense, yeah, but I was desperate. So that's the other part of it. I was not in an aligned space. Like I wasn't doing this because, okay, this might be something that will help my body. Let's go into it. It was all based in fear. Like I was just scared of the what ifs because they basically sent me home. There was no treatment at the time because I was just suspected. They sent me home to get worse. They said, we can't do anything until you get worse.
Come
So
back when you get worse. That's horrible.
that's horrible to be told that. I think I was like 30 at the time. Like it was just yeah, like it was not a good place mentally, and so I was doing it all out of fear. But I did start getting better. I I think it was just maybe 3 months in that my symptoms got worse. They were getting better and then they got worse. And that's when I found you. I literally just got down on my knees and started praying. I was like, please, please send me an angel to help me navigate through all this information because it is a lot. Like when you get on to the medium info, like it's so much, so many supplements and foods. And so then that's when I
And
found
in
you.
and in 2018, it was a lot less than it is now in 2024 because there were 2 books
Right.
and now there's 7 or something. So, yeah, it's even more intense. And I just want to throw in there that at one point I was in my car screaming at the universe to send me some freaking help because I'm at my wit's end. My child is going through a really hard time. And I was like, I cannot keep doing this. I literally was screaming to like a tears, like raw throat. I was like, I need help. Send me help. And Alex emailed me, I think that night, and was like, can I do an emotion code session for you? And I was like, yes, please. And the session she did for my daughter, she was having horrible separation anxiety when her dad I was newly separated from her dad, and when her dad would come to pick her up for his time, she would scream and cry and kick, and the anxiety would start first thing in the morning. She'd ask, "Where am I going today?" And we'd have to, like, physically take her and put her in the car and, like, shove the door shut, and it was so horrible. She was
Hmm.
3. It was so gut-wrenching and it wasn't getting better. And so I screamed at the universe and throw me a bone here. And then Alex did one emotion code session for her on that separation anxiety. And the next time her dad came to pick her up, she like looked at me with a little sad face and took her dad's hand and walked to the car. And I was like, now I have to learn how to do emotion code, which I did. So I just want to throw in there that we both have prayed for each other and come through, and that Alex is a really powerful healer in going through this, so just wanted to throw that in there for you.
Thank you. You saved me first though, because I don't know if you remember this. I was on one of your courses, like you were on a call, but I couldn't be there live. So I was just watching the replay. And here I am in my living room. I was pretty miserable because like I was like, why are my symptoms back? Spiraling. And somebody asked you a question. You just kind of reached down to grab the book to tell them about it. But
Yes.
a different book came into your hand is the emotion code book. And you're like, oh, I guess somebody needs to hear about this. It's about releasing negative tracked emotions. And I'm like screaming at them, like, it's me, Rachel. I needed that.
Yes, I do remember. I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was living in a different house, and I remember picking up the book, and I hadn't even read it yet at that point. I had just gotten it, and so we just deliver these messages back and forth
Yeah.
to each other apparently.
Yeah, and that's when basically you I first learned about the emotional side of it, and that's when you told me, well, you're having the symptoms because it's usually you need to pull back. And yeah, I gobbled up that book. I did like I started working on myself, releasing trapped emotions, and the results weren't like immediate, but over time, because I was just so obsessed about it, I kept releasing, releasing. I had huge, like, um, just emotional clarity and peace. And I started feeling better. I think later on that year, so it was about a year that I went on that medical, like, pretty strict on medical medium. Um, I had the best vitality I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, me
I
too.
felt great. I was feeling amazing. And a big part of that was the emotional healing and like pulling back and trying to listen more to my body. And like everyone around me saw the change. Like it wasn't just me. My husband was like, "Oh, I don't know what this voodoo is, but
How do I get a piece of that?
yeah. So it was amazing. And that's when we decided that we're ready to start a family. And I got pregnant really fast. I had the best pregnancy ever. Like I felt so good. Um, However, during the pregnancy, I had maybe one or two like little emotional breakdowns. And that was the universe just tapping me on the shoulder, like, hey, you need to do a little bit more of that inner work that you started on. Because I
Mhm.
think with the emotion code, I was just scratching the surface. I wasn't really embodying a lot of it. I wasn't feeling into my body a lot. I didn't
Yeah,
pay attention.
I think emotion code is really powerful for sort of clearing the air, if you will, or
Yeah.
clearing your field. Um,
I kind
it
of like to say like clearing the speed bumps. There are some speed bumps around the road and yeah. And but it's not a replacement for doing the inner work actively.
it's not a replacement for feeling your emotions in the present moment.
Yes.
You just end up with more trapped emotions. Yeah, I think it is very powerful for, again, like removing those speed bumps, like you say, or like for me, I see the emotions kind of like I could say they flow through like a tube or a channel. And so
Hmm.
you've got a lot of old emotions that are backed up in there. And then a new emotion comes in. You don't know what emotion you're feeling, where it came from. Is this old? Is this new? Is this current? Is there something wrong? Am I just like out of my mind? So when you can use emotion code to kind of um, clear out the old stuff, then when a new thing comes in, you go, "Oh, I feel anxious, and it got triggered by this." And now I understand it's related to a deeper like issue from my childhood. And then you can work with that. But when your whole field is all clouded with old stuff, it's very difficult to get the clarity. So I think it clears the field a bit, but then you've got to go inside for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to be really clear about like the rest of my story is not to make somebody feel guilty that they're causing their illness or any of that stuff because there's no place for shame or guilt. It's just that I really think that our soul gives us the opportunities to heal, and if we're not paying attention, then it's gonna get our attention in a bigger way.
Yes.
And you know me, I'm really stubborn. So I wouldn't have started my healing if I didn't have this really big thing from the doctor. Like, I
Yeah.
needed this. I needed to be told that I might have a really debilitating, potentially debilitating disease to start putting myself first. Um, and it's not great, but that's part of my trauma. It's part of my story. And that's what I'm here to work on. So, fast forward to it was like
Can
2020.
can I interject first? I think
Yeah, sure.
we all need that. Like nobody changes because everything's going great. Like we only change at a
True.
point of crisis. And I think it's up to us what level of crisis we're willing to make the change at. Because it's going to come in as a whisper first from the universe, like just a little sensation in your body, like, hey, I don't feel that good. And then it's going to come in as a little bit of emotional breakdown. And then it's going to come in as like, going through a foreclosure or a divorce. And then it's going to come in as a health, and then it's going to keep getting louder and louder and louder and louder until it's screaming at you and you're like, oh shit. So, so if we can learn anything, it's to start listening to the wisdom of the body earlier and trusting it and knowing that when we have a strong like emotional reaction to something, or when we have a health symptom pop up, or when we have some sort any kind of crisis, small or large, in our life, it's not because we fucked something up. It's because the universe is trying to redirect our focus. And so if we
Yeah.
can take those small moments and go, okay, I got to pause, I'm on the wrong track, and like redirect, then we can start to go down the right path and things will shift. But if we just keep going, no, I have to go this way, it has to stay the same, I have to keep doing the same thing, and then it gets louder and louder and louder until the crisis gets bigger and bigger. So we all need that point of crisis, and I've had plenty of them. We'll probably have another one to make us really get serious about changing. So the more we can heed that inner whisper early on, then the less I think severe it has to get. But we don't have a lot of examples of people around us doing this work and listening to the little whispers and making the changes ahead of time, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. So we're not as modern 2024 living individuals accustomed to doing it that way. So it's
Yeah.
like unlearning a lot of old patterning and old conditioning and starting to figure out a new way to operate in the world, a new way to connect with our body, a new way of thinking, a new way of being. So I always say, like, there's no such thing as a mistake. There's no shame, there's no guilt. You never did anything wrong. It couldn't be any other way because you're working with the level of awareness and the tools that you had at the time, and you can't get more awareness and more tools unless hammer your finger a couple times and you're like, I need a
Yeah.
different technique here. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. There is no shame, there is no guilt. All of this work, inner work, has to come from a place, and the healing with the food, it has to come from a place of love, of nourishment, of compassion, of respect for the self and respect for your journey, and not a place of punishing yourself, because
Yeah.
then you just get into stress hormones, and we gotta we
Yeah.
gotta we gotta stay in the space of unconditional love for ourselves and
And healing. Yeah.
healing. Yeah, absolutely. So go on.
Yeah, well, that definitely makes sense because I didn't looking back, I realized during that whole year with medical medium, yes, I felt better, but I wasn't ready to really dive deep into the pain that was inside and the trauma because I guess um I didn't have that capacity yet. I
It's
needed to build the
scary.
capacity, yeah, and it's scary, yeah. I wasn't ready to dive deep, so, after my son was born, um, I started to go downhill again, and that's because motherhood will do that, like,
Welcome to the
it
initiation.
yeah, I mean, it just strips you bare to your elemental parts, and you're just faced with yourself, and it was like, either start healing or that's it, like, it was a very very I thought I had been in a dark place before, this was
I
much
remember.
deeper.
I
Yeah,
was I
yeah.
was worried about you, really worried.
Yeah, and yeah, I was my symptoms not all the symptoms came back, like, I've never had the brain fog again, so all the detox that I did, like, it did make a tremendous effect, but at this point, I really think that the symptoms were less related to the physical pathogens and more to do with, like, the emotional part, the soul part that was telling me that I was not living in alignment at all. I was not putting myself first still, and even more so in motherhood, it's so hard to do that. So it was like double whammy. I was very depressed. I really resonated with that email that you sent recently about all the shoulds. It was all the shoulds.
Yeah.
I was very
Should
much
be
in that
drinking celery juice.
space.
I should be eating raw. I should be eating fat free. I should be taking more supplements. I should be exercising. I should be losing weight. I should be breastfeeding. I should like it's
It
crazy.
never ends. And it hits women so much harder because we're prone to all this social conditioning that we don't even realize, all these messaging and all these things that I'd never thought about before. I was like, oh my God, like all this is coming up for me, what a mom should be doing. And I couldn't do any of that because my body was had a really hard time recovering from, I had to have a C-section that I hadn't planned for. And then my symptoms came back. I was dizzy, and on top of that, went back to working with a new neurologist, which was really good. But he inspired so much fear because he said, well, we're just basically waiting now for you to have like to get worse, like get a neurological event. I'm like, wait, what? What are you talking about? He's like, well, you don't know what it'll be. You could just go numb on one side of your body. You could like lose feeling in some limbs or whatever. And I'm just holding my baby, fearing that I might fall down at any moment. Or it was just so much fear, so much pain, so much shame as well that I couldn't take care of this baby that I really wanted. Like it was rough. So I was faced with like, okay, I guess now is time for me to look inwards. What is this pain trying to tell me? Why do I have such a hard time putting myself first? Why do I have a hard time trusting my body? And I had to let go of all foods, and it was heartbreaking, and a lot of guilt came up, but I had to let go of a lot of medical medium stuff because I just couldn't do it. My body couldn't handle it. I was also really depressed, had a lot of suicidal ideation, and I needed to eat more foods that would ground me. Like I looking back now, like I felt a lot of shame and guilt at the time, but looking back, it's what kept me alive, like to eat like heavy foods, a lot of emotional eating, but it's what I needed at the time.
Yeah, and I talk about that a lot when people say like, they can eat raw for like a couple days maybe or maybe they can't even and they can't get past that or maybe they can't even get through raw until noon. Like I'm like that's your body's way of telling you that detox is too much. And
Hmm.
I think Anthony says like you can't detox too much, which is true. I don't think it's like hurting you, but can your nervous system and your adrenals handle it? That's the thing. So if eating raw is spiking your stress hormones and you can't because you're already dysregulated and your stress hormones are already up and it starts to further dysregulate you, then and it usually sends people up into like anxiety and like you feel over stimulated anxious as opposed to understimulated and depressive. If it starts pushing you in that direction, you got to turn around and you got to get like if you're sensitive to the no foods, you got to get oats in, you got to get potatoes in the morning, you got to get more grains, more beans, and those the soluble fiber in those foods actually helps pull adrenaline and stress hormones out of the digestive tract. So there is physiology behind this that you can't eat high raw or low fat when you're already in fight or flight. So I at this point end up telling a lot of people like you got to back off because what you're doing is if you're feeling more dysregulated after you eat, it's not helping you. So food can help regulate your nervous system. And so on one extreme, we have emotional eating where we're completely numbing, we're consuming like foods that are harmful to our health. And on the other end of emotional eating, we have a place where we're using food to ground, we're using food to regulate our nervous system, and it's really supportive and it's really nourishing. So it's okay. I did this yesterday. I did this yesterday. I had a trigger. And I had made my smoothie and I had brought my potatoes down for lunch and I got down to my office at like 10 a.m. and I was like, oh, it's potato time. I'm having the potato and the avocados right now. Like I'm not drinking. I can't keep going raw right now because I'm feeling like, ugh. So I just drank my smoothie after. So that's a very minor example. Like I have talked so much about emotional eating, but the grounding food, I totally agree, can be literally life-saving. And if you're dealing with a really dysregulated nervous system on a regular basis, especially if you're in postpartum anxiety or anything like that, you need those grounding foods. So don't feel like you should be doing all of these things when you do those things and they make you feel worse. There's a place where you have to push through a little detox, but it's different. Your body is telling you it needs grounding. And sometimes you need that nourishing grounding food to then be in a regulated enough place to explore the emotions and start to do the inner work. So, yeah, that's a
Yeah, and
typical example.
that's when I started, because I didn't have another choice,
And if it's
really.
junk food, that's okay too. I wanna throw that out
Yeah.
there. I just gave the potatoes and avocado example, but sometimes it's junk. Sometimes it's like cookies and chips and like whatever else, like vegan ice cream. Like sometimes it's total junk too, and that's completely, I don't even wanna call it junk, but I'm like, that's completely fine. Like if that's what you need to get through, and like if it's gluten, like, or if it's dairy, like it's okay to do that. We don't have to be on one strict path all the time. Like this is a big thing that I'm passionate about too, is like there's going to be ebbs and flows in the way you're eating, and that is perfectly normal and natural, because sometimes the universe is trying to tell you it's not about food right now, it's about the inner work. And when you can listen to that, it gets to be easier, because then you're not swimming upstream all the time trying to should your way into health, and that
Totally. And I mean, this came from a place where like I was like, you know me, Rachel, I was 100% medical medium. Like people would be eating other foods around me and are like, do you not like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I don't need this. Like I was 100% on medical medium. And then afterwards, like I just could not, my body couldn't because like you said, I was in survival mode. My nervous system was very dysregulated. And I soon started to do a lot of like learning about this stuff and realizing that our body, our mind, our soul, our heart, they're not separate. The immune system and the emotional system are actually one and the same. If you're in like dysregulated and fight or flight, you could be eating all the most amazing foods in the world, totally 100% on protocol, and still not getting better because you can't
100%.
heal.
Because your immune system is turned all the way down, because
Yeah.
your body is just trying to survive that moment. And what's the point of fighting off a long-term virus if your respiratory system or your circulatory system is going to shut down? Like
Yeah.
your body's not going to put energy into digestion. You're not going to be absorbing the food. Your immune system is not going to be fighting pathogens. None of it is going to work no matter what you eat or what supplement you take.
Yeah. And it took me a while to get to that knowledge, but we come to the healing as we can.
Yep. One bump at a
Um,
time.
yeah. So I think I'm now, so 2021, I guess, is when I did start the inner work, really committing to it. We're in 2024 now. I've been on a lot of ups and downs, like huge ups and downs, but throughout it all, the one thing I've stayed committed to is looking inward and trying to decipher like what is my body trying to tell me? I feel this way. What is this pain that I'm feeling internally, like emotional pain? What are these symptoms, physical symptoms? What are they trying to tell me about my internal world, about the emotions? And that's when the magic starts happening. You start getting so many breakthroughs when you look inside. It takes a lot, like it required a lot of courage for me to look inwards and just really explore. Like you're just exploring the shadow. And it can actually like one lesson that I learned from the Gene Keys is that every shadow contains a gift. And it's so true because whenever you start digging into why am I unable to put myself first, you start to find little nuggets like where did that start in childhood and starting to unravel that and a lot of beauty can come from it because you use all the tools at your disposal. Like I'm using the emotion code. I discovered human design, and that was really helpful to give myself permission to be the way I am, to embrace
What
myself fully.
what's your human design?
So I'm an ego manifester. And what that means is the best thing for me is to follow my heart's desires. And that's also going to be the best thing for everyone around me and for all of humanity. Coming from somebody who is a people pleaser and was a people pleaser, um, who had a really hard time putting my own needs first, that was a huge permission slip. I'm like, wait, okay. So what I want to do, not in the sense of like an egotistical way, but just tapping into your heart's desires and with my heart's desires and just tapping into like, and now it makes sense when I first decided that I wanted to do the emotion code certification. It made no sense. Like it had nothing to do with my career or other things that I'd done before, but it felt so right. And in my heart, I knew it was right. So I just did it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And so things like that, like you don't, um, yeah, following my heart, and it's still a process. Like it's still taking so long to start being able to trust my inner body wisdom, to trust my inner desires. But that's the beautiful part of it, that I'm now committed to that inner path. And even if I make mistakes along the way, that's okay because I see so much growth happening. And especially in the last 6 months, I was mentioning this to you before, I've seen a lot of breakthroughs. Recently, I've been able to, oh, and I didn't mention that in the meantime, I did get diagnosed with MS. So I did receive the dreaded relapsing remitting MS diagnosis. Um, and I resisted starting treatment for a long time. I took maybe a year to decide. And then looking back, it was definitely another fear based reasoning. So I did start treatment. It didn't feel aligned at all. It still doesn't. And I'm in the process of internally, like a process that's totally internal with myself, to allow myself to make that decision to say it doesn't matter what the fear says. It doesn't matter what the fear from the medical system says. I'm choosing to do what's right for me.
Mhm.
And I'm getting closer to that. I feel it. And also, the last MRI result was the best one I've ever had since I started. So it's 2024. Symptoms first started in 2015. My first MRI was in 2018, so I'm now entering my 7th year of healing. And I had one in the last MRI result, I had one less lesion, like one just completely healed,
That's
disappeared,
amazing.
and one got smaller. Um, yeah, and I got one new one, but the last MRI was a very long time ago, so I've kind of looking at it from an internal perspective as like, okay, that was the past where I was still in so much stress and fear.
Mhm.
And this is the path that I can be on now. And when you do start doing the inner work, when you start healing from the inside out, from the emotions and from the soul, you can actually affect your cellular pathways, you can affect your DNA, and it's been proven by science. And miracles, things that sound like miracles, but they can be real life, start happening.
Well, as soon as you change your thoughts, it changes your internal chemistry, changes your stress hormones, changes your neurotransmitters, changes cellular activity, changes immune system. So of course, the energy that we sit with on a daily basis is either moving us where we want to go or moving us away from where we want to go. And so there's so many layers to this. It's not that you can just sit still and think your way into the future that you want. Like this is a physical plane. Like we have to nourish our bodies with good foods. And what that means for each person is very unique. Um, we have to look at our thoughts, and are we in patterns of really toxic and low vibrational thoughts, and do we like those thoughts? Do they feel good, or do they feel negative, and do we want to change them? So we have to look at the thoughts. We have to look at our nervous system, and the messages our body is sending to us. Like, are we constantly in a state of fight or flight? Are we on the edge of adrenal burnout or in adrenal burnout? um and working then also with the energy leaks in our life. Like, do we have a misaligned job? Do we have misaligned relationships? Do we have misaligned places where we're giving more than what we're receiving back? So we have to take action steps in our life, on a physical perspective, on a mental perspective, on an energetic relationship, everything perspective, right? And we have to look at wellness as a holistic combination of all of these things. Just like we have to look at the body as a holistic being, and not an isolated diagnosis of MS, an isolated nervous system, an isolated digestive system, as these separate things that aren't delicately interwoven and interconnected on both ends of this physical and energetic lifestyle spectrum. All of it is interwoven and intertwined. So when you pull the spider web at one end, there's going to be a movement here and there and everywhere in between. So I think it's really important to keep this in mind. And so every little movement that we make with food, with thoughts, with boundaries, with our awareness, is all making shifts. And so I think sometimes people are looking for this, like, boom, like quantum shift. And then when they don't get it, and they don't get it in a certain timeline, they're like, it's not working. And you're like, well, it is working, but like, it's a delicate weave, and we have to take one little piece of the web or the pie, and tweak it, and then go over here and tweak that one, and then at the end there is this beautiful web that's all interconnected. But at any point in time, something can fly into your web and make something out of alignment, so then we have to go to that spot, and then we have to go to this spot. And so it is this, like, delicate balance of following those subtle shifts, those subtle pings, the little hint of your intuition that either whispers in your ear, or you feel in your body, or you just know, or you have a dream about, and like giving yourself permission to just constantly be reweaving the web and reweaving the fabric of who you are. Really, it is reweaving yourself into the truth of who you are, and finding this delicate balance in navigating this crazy ass earth plane, and bodies that break, and things that are out of our control happen too, things that have nothing to do with
Yeah.
any choices we made, that are just, in my opinion, predestined in some ways. So
Mhm.
I think that looking for an ending, or looking for the point of perfection, or like, I did it. Well, it's a moving target. So even if you did it,
Yeah.
even if you're not on that medical medium protocol and you're doing it perfectly and you feel amazing and you're cruising along, well, guess what? New challenge comes your way. So I think just getting used to and expecting this constant evolution and this constant change and new challenges being thrown your way has to become the norm, because there is no end. And a client said this to me recently, that she newly started working with me, new to medical medium, newer to the inner work, is like, I feel like I get what you're saying, Rachel, but I feel like I have this mountain of inner work to
Mm,
do. And I was like, yeah, we all do.
yeah.
We all
Yeah.
start there. Like,
And I
wow.
love that I love that analogy. Yeah, reweaving into wholeness, because that's what it is. We're trying to remember. We're not really trying to become whole because we already are whole. We're remembering what it is to be whole.
Mhm.
And yeah, it did feel like a mountain when I first started. I know that there's a lot more to do because it's a lifelong journey, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, I love doing the inner work because it is getting me closer to being myself. Um,
There's freedom
but
in it.
there's
So
so
much
much
freedom
freedom,
in it.
yeah, and joy and happiness. And the other part of it is just looking at being able to look at this big scary monster that it was for me for so long, MS,
Mhm.
as my teacher. Like, what? what is it trying to teach me? And learning it sounds ridiculous and I feel emotional even saying it, but learning to love this part of me, this MS that came here to show me that I do matter, that I can put myself first, to show me that I wasn't doing that before. And the grief that comes with that. I had a lot of grief looking back and thinking, oh my gosh, how much did I push myself to live a life that was so unaligned, to do a million and one things that were not aligned? I'm talking work, I'm talking school, even just and then the other part of the grief of not following the things that I did want to do. I love writing, and I decided to take a course. It was like a wild women writing course, where I just met with other women once a week, and we wrote, just allowed our bodies to write basically. And the first class, I was bawling my eyes out because I was like, I'm giving myself such a big gift to allow myself to even do this, to give myself the time and space to write, which I've probably been wanting to do since I was little. And
Mhm.
it took this illness to come through my life to tell me, like, it's okay to follow your desires because who knows what will come out of it. Something beautiful and healing for other people as well. But even if it's not for other people, it's for my own soul. And I matter and
Yeah.
I can do that.
And it's not
It's,
even just like a permission slip to do, it's like your soul needs to do that, or you're not going
yeah.
to feel the life force inside of you. So everybody has their thing. For me, that's horses. If I don't have time with horses, if I don't climb on a horse every once in a while, I start to feel like crazy and horrible. Like my soul came here to get on a horse and to spend time with animals. So like that is a non-negotiable for me. And I've figured out a way to make that a part of my work so that I that never goes away. Like it is ingrained. So yeah, so those things that you feel such passion for, if you because there's a million reasons that will tell you why you can't do that. Oh, you can't write, won't make you any money, it's a waste of time, you're not that good at it, who's gonna read it? Like, there's a million and one reasons, right? But
Million one,
all of
yeah.
that is complete BS. Like, you need to write because you just need to write.
Yeah, and through this course, I discovered that I like to write poetry, and I'm still in the space where I'm like, and I've started sharing it on my podcast because I'm still apologizing, but I'm gonna get better at that. Like this is like I haven't worked it a lot. It doesn't matter. It
Yeah,
just needs to come out of me because staying like the energy that it takes for it to stay trapped in my body, it's making me sick. Like I need to let the creative force come out. Otherwise, like not just that it's making me sick, but it makes me a better person to allow it to flow out of me. Even if it's no good, it does not matter.
yeah,
It just needs to be out into the world. But I've also like surprised myself with some beautiful words that I'm sure maybe have helped somebody else who's dealing with the stuff that I dealt with. And I don't even need to know like that they did. I just know that it being in the world because my soul called out for it is what needed to happen.
yeah, yeah. So I think, yeah, so we all start at this place of like the inner work being like this giant monster, right? And there's something that pushed you there.
Hmm.
For most people listening to this, it's a health issue and it feels scary and you hate it and you don't want it. But, um, like, so part of my human design is I have the channel of struggle. And so part of my gifting is that I can see the value in struggle. I can see
Mm.
the gifts in the pain. I can see the gifts in the things that we don't want and we did not invite into our well, I guess we did invite them into our world, but the things we think we don't want, I can see why. I see the reason why, and that's how it helps me to be a good coach in helping people through the inner work is because I can be like, "Well, here's why." Like,
Yeah.
this is showing up for you, not against you. So, it's a definite shift in mindset, and so when it feels like a monster and this is very interesting in my energy work when I see entities like dark energies around people, the traditional approach is like we have to get rid of this, we have to kick it out, make it go away. Same with physical symptoms. How do I get rid of this? How do we make this
Yeah.
gone? How do we
Or you
and
fight
what's our
it.
yeah, I
All this
fight.
language of like fighting it, making it go away, pushing it
I'm a
away.
warrior, right?
Yeah, the warrior.
And not to poo poo the warrior thing, but it's a fight language. And I came to this place where I started just being like, well, let's just sit with this entity and like, could it actually be trying to help you? Could it
Mhm.
actually be here for a reason? Could this be part of the evolution of this entity's experience as well? So like, just I don't know, feels really out there. Here I am apologizing now to even say things like this, but I'm like, let's help this entity evolve and for you to learn from it and for it to learn from you. And then we shift this from this is this thing that's attacking me, just like the idea of autoimmunity. My body's attacking itself. My body's broken. I have bad genes. Oh, this is just a card I was dealt, to like, could this actually be showing up for a reason? Could this actually be helping you and helping you to grow and learn and expand and become like a more vibrant, amazing, brilliant, cool, interesting person who has a lot of value to share with the world on a small level or big level. And so, yeah, so I think when you feel like you have this mountain and you're like, how do I even start the inner work? What the hell is it? Like, you guys are saying all these cool things, but like, what does it really mean? It's just identifying the monsters and identifying the things that you're most afraid of. Like, am I going to get really sick and debilitated? Am I going to die? Am I going to go broke? Am I going to end up alone? Am I, like, go to like, I would tell people, let's play the worst case scenario game.
Yeah,
Like,
I love your I love that tip that you have.
what's the worst thing that could happen? And sometimes when you say it out loud, you're like, oh, okay. Like, I end up in a wheelchair. Like, do people live amazing lives in wheelchairs? They do.
Yeah.
So like, can you make peace with that monster? Can you sit with that monster and be like, okay, like, I see you and I can start to look at you and examine you without seeing you now as a monster, but seeing you
Right.
as a shadow or a place of learning or a disassociated part of myself that I have not
Mhm.
been honoring or nurturing, or some trauma. Some bad shit happens to us,
Yeah.
and
Well,
whether that
one huge thing that shifted for me was when I was able, it took a while to build this capacity to get to here, but at one point I was able to sit with MS and be like, hey, would you like to do something else? Like, you have this job of teaching me all these lessons. Like, you bring on the symptoms so that I can live a more aligned life, something that matches my soul. But do you want to do something else? Like, would you like a different job? And it was like, yeah, I'd love to be your like fun person and your creativity person and the part of you that creates and is silly and happy and joyful. And that sounds very strange, but it's such a beautiful shift because then I'm giving this other part of me that my soul was craving. I'm giving it a different job. And um, one thing that really helped me get there was contemplation and taking many pauses. Because we live such busy, busy lives, and we don't stop to just sit with our bodies, stop to just take a really deep belly breath and see like what is your body trying to tell you. And it
Mhm.
can start small, just start with 5 minutes. And then you'll start noticing like so many intrusive thoughts start to come up and
stories that you make,
stories.
yeah.
And start small. Like I worked with a wonderful with a counselor, but we don't do like talk therapy. We're just doing inner work, sitting with the body, seeing what comes up, what images come up, what sensations. And it took me maybe a year of working with her regularly to be able to do that on my own. To build that capacity to then in between sessions or just by myself to be able to contemplate and get breakthroughs. And once also you give your body the time and your soul the time and space to do that, it will reward you with so many beautiful images and synchronicities. Like we've both had such such beautiful stories, like answers just start coming in, pouring in from the divine once you open yourself up to that possibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it really is like, you can sit, everyone's familiar with the idea of meditation at this point, but I think there's this misguided thing that you have to like sit perfectly still and you have to clear your mind, and that doesn't, and you have to do it every day at a like the same time, and it's a very like masculine approach, right? It has to
Yeah.
be like this at this time, do it this way, or it's wrong and you're not getting benefits from it. So like for me, meditation is more of a practice of self-awareness, and just as I walk
Mm.
around through my day going like, how does my body feel? Oh, I feel myself starting to get stressed out now because I'm trying to do multiple things and the children need something and I need something and I'm hungry and
I think you're basically describing that's contemplation. Contemplation is in between meditation and like intense like prayer, like concentration focus.
Mhm.
Contemplation just really fits our day-to-day lives because you can't just drop everything and go meditate for half an hour if you've got a busy life and you've got kids and a job and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Contemplation, you can just do it anytime, any place, just anytime you, like you said, just sit with your body.
Yeah, just check in. I say, like, do it when you go to the bathroom. Everybody's going to the bathroom a certain number of times a day. Hopefully, you're by yourself, not always when you're not, but just breathe for a moment and just feel what's in my head, what's in my body, and that's where it starts, and it is that simple. And there's many, many modalities of energy healing, and like, there's so many different ways to do it. It starts with just that contemplation. I might call it self-awareness or non-judgmental self-observation, call it what you want. Like, it starts with that, and then you just follow what piques your curiosity. You listen to the people that like give you that warm fuzzy feeling or a tingle or a chill, and you're like, "Ooh, there's something there for me." And then it starts with going to get a Reiki session or finding a practitioner who does somatic healing and embodiment work and checking in, and or going to get a tarot card reading, or like, there's that's the beauty of it, is you get to find, sometimes we get caught in this, well, like, so and so drank celery juice every day for 365 days with no break and they got better, so that must be what I have to do. No, or so and so used emotion code and all their symptoms went away. So now I tried it. Why didn't it work? It's because there's a special blend out there. There's a special cocktail
Yeah.
of tools, and you have to try some that don't work and try others where you go, "Oh, this is a thing for me." And so
There's
that's
no silver bullet.
no. And it's a lifelong practice. And like Alex, you're talking about your journey is 9 years. I started had my first spiritual teacher in 2014 or 2015. So it's the same 9, 10 years for me. And the beauty of it is, like you said, you build your capacity to go deeper and to hold more and to become more of yourself. And so it gets easier. It starts out a
It
little
does.
overwhelming, can feel very overwhelming, but it gets
And
easier.
it does, and then it's not the other big thing is that it's not a linear path, and we're the masculine patriarchal way is to think like it goes from A to B to C. It doesn't go that way, and that can trip you up. It's like a spiral path. You go around the bend, you're like, "Oh, I thought I dealt with these issues and they're coming back." But when you go around that bend, you have different tools, different capacity, then you deal it does become easier even though if you're just going around the spiral and maybe dealing with a lot of the same types of issues, but you're peeling back layers and layers and layers,
Yeah.
going
So
deeper.
let it be fun, and let it
Yeah.
be a process of learning and of curi like, it's really about letting your curiosity and your excitement lead the way. And so I love the medical medium information. It changed my life. I still practice with it. I don't really want to work with anyone who is not at least somewhat tuned into the medical medium information, because it's hard for me. I think it's very powerful in cleansing the physical vessel, which makes this inner work easier. So I am fully on board with that, but I do think that it it's not the magic bullet for everyone. If you just have pathogen issues, it's going to work wonders. But if you've got nervous system dysregulation and deeper levels of spiritual healing connected with your illness, it may not be enough. And so, and you may need to go to it and step away from it and come back to it and step away from it. And again, it's not linear depending on, like I said earlier, where the universe is turning your focus. And so if we ignore the body and get into the minds and the shoulds, that's when we get ourselves in trouble. But when we drop in and we go, okay, is this working? Does this feel good? Am I hating celery juice every day and like forcing myself to drink it?
Mhm.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So it really does, like, the process of the inner work really does get to be joyful, and it can feel scary and overwhelming at first, especially if if it's brand new, but it's the most worthwhile thing that you'll ever do because it opens up miracles not just in your health, but in every other
Mhm.
facet of
It
your life.
and it creates so much freedom and space and joy in your life. I get to enjoy life again. I get to do life versus just trudging along and
Waiting for that neurological crash, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I no longer am scared. Like if I get a new twinge in my body, I don't think, "Oh no, is this MS?" I don't need to live like that anymore. And there's so much freedom in that if you've ever become vigilant about your symptoms and health, like that there's so much freedom and your
Or
nervous system just sighs. Like you can just
or
go.
hyper vigilant about what you're eating, you know?
Yeah, that too.
It leads to disordered eating habits, which are not supportive of health. So again, I have a whole talk on this on orthorexia, like an unhealthy obsession with healthy eating that um like the more you do, you might actually be making yourself sicker because the stress hormones associated with it. So there is this sweet spot where we're doing enough, but we're not overdoing or underdoing.
Yeah,
Okay, so you have an amazing story. It's a work in progress, just like all of us.
always.
What would be like your closing takeaway, or what gift or nugget would you leave for people watching?
Just this reminder that by diving into the shadow, you can find miracles and peace and so many gifts. And that we can we can become friends with our illness, with our symptoms, with the things that really scare us and find so much joy and peace on the other side by welcoming those parts of us that we're actually scared of, welcoming them into wholeness. And I guess just I want to perpetuate hope. Like there is hope on the other side. I have now become very detached from what is my next MRI going to look like. Of course, I want it to be a great result, but it doesn't really matter because I find so much truth within, and that's what matters. Like the wisdom of my body is way more important than any other medical test or just tapping into my body and knowing that I do feel better. I do feel a lot more vitality and um, energies flowing differently. Knowing that inner knowing is more important than anything else.
Trust.
Trust, yeah.
Yeah.
Trust is the word for me, the next piece of my work.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's a big piece of the puzzle is we don't trust our bodies to communicate with us. So we have to like create these intensive protocols or do all this
mhm.
testing or get lab results that validate or devalidate the way we're feeling, right? When we put a lot of stock into these external validators when we don't want to turn a blind eye to those things. You have to be smart about doing some screening work,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But but coming back into a place of trusting your body and trusting your intuition and not having it all run from the logical, analytical, masculine side.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not that it doesn't matter, it's not that the testing is not important, it's just that and I don't need to be attached to it and completely, um, destroyed if something doesn't work. I have the trust in the universe that maybe there's another lesson that I need to learn on the other end, and I'm gonna keep plugging away at it. It's
Yeah.
just the intention and the energy behind it matters so much.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, "Break me down," because on the other side of that is so much good stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Bring it on." Like, I wanna give me a breakdown so I can get some more good stuff, like, I'm bring it on. You guys probably think I'm crazy for saying that, but, like, no, I'm like, I want a breakthrough, and you have to most often break down to break through, so
Yeah,
then
in the challenge is the breakthrough. You can't really get to it without that constriction and that pain.
yeah, yep, yeah, totally. Alright, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm just, like, thrilled to hear it, and maybe we'll have a part 2 in, a year or so and see where we are with this, but, yeah, thank you. It's been a blessing to hear your story, and hopefully we'll do more.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for, creating such a safe space for me. It's the first time I actually shared this, publicly, so I felt really safe to share it with you and all your clients.
Yeah, and the world, right? Not just
Yes.
straighten up. Only the most aligned and loving souls will watch this. That's it. That's how it works. That's the only people who get access to my stuff, so you are protected.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.